Well, am I going to do it?
Good afternoon, good morning. Yes, you can do it. Go ahead. Go ahead, Adam.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world.
I love that. I love that. That's brilliant. Imitation is the best form of flattery. Something like that, isn't it? Thank you very much, Adam. That's Adam Fine of Dropcopter fame, who is sat in the offices of Genius New York, or Genius NY. I think that means New York. We'll find out what that means in a moment. I must say good day to Ian as well, Louis, and of course, Mr. Simpson sat over there. So without further ado, let us ship ourselves off to New York and Genius New York. What on earth's that about, and why on earth's Dropcopter there, and why on earth there's some sort of fixed-wing aeroplane, and a lot of on earth. Why is there a fixed-wing aeroplane in the background?
I can't tell you about the fixed-wing airplane, but I can tell you a little bit about Genius New York and why I'm sitting next to a couple of geniuses with Dropcopter here in acrobatics. These are representatives from both years of our cohort. We're in our second year. But Genius is a program funded by New York State, in central New York, up in Syracuse area, and we actually invest specifically in unmanned aerial systems. So early stage startup companies that are looking for funding, looking for a place to grow their business, and looking for access to our test site that's operated with one of the 7 or 8 now that are out there by the FAA and supported by New Air. We allow companies to come and grow and provide a friendly, supportive environment for drone-friendly region in New York State, and we are really just trying to increase economic development in the area and help these companies grow and succeed.
Okay, and is it a rough neighborhood? I see the netting behind you there. I mean, have you got concerns and worries?
No, it's a very friendly neighborhood. We're kind of a mid-sized city known for college basketball here in Syracuse, but the net is to allow Saucy to fly without hurting anybody. We had to bring in some state officials not too long ago, and we said, well, you got to have a net up so you don't hit any of them. But no, we're very drone friendly, and the people are friendly as well.
So you say you support drone outfits. Well, how much, Tom? How much money have you got to pony up?
We are the largest accelerator competition for unmanned systems in the world. We invest $3 million each year directly into 6 startup companies focused on UAS or other unmanned systems related technologies. It is a competition-based system. If you are selected as a finalist, in the first 2 years, you'd compete to get, at a minimum, a $250,000 investment for 3 teams, and then the other 3 would get $400,000, $600,000, or $1 million, respectively. We are changing that. We had just announced over the last couple days that next year, for our 2019 cohort, we will be investing the same amount, $3 million directly, but into 5 companies. 4 of them will receive $500,000. And 1 team will receive the grand prize of $1 million investment.
Wow, that's some serious money. So I assume that the companies are going to be American based.
No, definitely not. Actually, we had our first international team last year, Photokite from Switzerland. That's in the program this year, and we are expecting more international companies. We're finding that a lot of these companies abroad are looking to do business in New York State or within the U.S. So we are a great soft landing for them to expand their business into the U.S. And yeah, we have no limitations on who or what we can invest in geographically, but we do focus on growth technology companies, ideally in unmanned systems, but also in automation, data to decision platforms, data analytics. We're pretty flexible on that end too.
It should be mentioned that an international team actually took the grand prize.
Yeah, Photokite, our Switzerland-based company, received the $1 million investment this year.
I just wrote down data to decision. That's a very good buzzword. I've not heard that before. I had to write that down. That's brilliant. I've just stolen that now. I'm going to be using that all the time. So I say I want to come and win the prize then next time. What about how can my company work there? Get the rights to work in New York and be legally using your testing area and things like that?
Yeah, we do work with the teams to help with forming a legal entity in the U.S. if needed. It's not always required, but typically we do help them form a legal corp in the U.S. To allow them to hire on here and continue to grow. But as far as getting access to the test site, not just Genius New York teams that are selected. We're willing to work with companies from around the world who want access to our test site. which is actually located at the Griffiths Airport in Rome, New York. And it's operated by a group called New Air Alliance, which works with hundreds of companies around the country and organizations that are trying to support the development and the ecosystem for drones, for commercial drone operations. And our test site is unique because we are one of the first, if not the first, to have a 50-mile corridor that will allow legal beyond visible line of sight testing right here in New York State between the test site and Syracuse, New York. And it's going to be fully instrumented, and it has a professional staff that can track all of your data, log out all of your data, and provide that safety use case to the FAA to continue to get additional waivers or COAs to allow you to operate commercial operations in other areas.
Yeah, you've got one of the trial ADSB corridors there, I think, for that. Had there been many flights up and down that corridor yet?
So the corridor is really just getting instrumented now. At the test site, though, yes, there has been quite a number of flights from not just smaller companies in the startup realm, but also large companies and corporations that have partnered up with New Air and the test site to begin these safety use cases, providing data that will go back to the FAA to show we can do this safely, we can do this responsibly, and this is how we're going to do it. The full length of the corridor should be operational, I believe, early next year. And there will be a whole symposium coming up here called the New Air Symposium that if you want to learn more, it's a great thing to come to Central New York, visit. They'll do test sites at the actual operational field, and they'll show you what their capabilities are.
I suppose a big question people might ask is, all right, so if I rock up there, how much is it going to cost me per day or per hour to be on the test site flying my aircraft?
I don't know the pricing structure actually through New Air. It depends on a number of things, exactly what you want to test, the size of your company, what types of aircraft you're flying, because they do fly everything from small drones to unmanned Cessnas. So it depends on a lot of factors, but I do know at this stage, because of New York State's backing and funding, it is extremely reasonably priced to the point that startup companies have been able to take advantage of it, as well as large corporations.
So one of the advantages of your incubator is that the companies that are on the incubator use the test site for free, right?
Sometimes it's for free. We will help subsidize the cost, but not always. It depends on the extent of work they want to do there. But we do have companies that have utilized the test site for free. One thing to note with Genius, we're not always investing in the actual drones themselves. So a lot of the companies we invest in are developing the software, payloads that would go on the drone, like Dropcopter with their pollinator, or the mission flight management software. So some of them will work with other companies to achieve specific missions around autonomous flight or different flight operations. We only have a couple hardware investments, actually.
So something we've actually been working closely with New Air with is actually their pilots. So we've been very lucky to be working closely with their pilots who have a lot of experience working directly with the FAA on small UAS systems. So if we go to New Air and say, hey, we need 3 pilots next week, they'll just call up the pilots and say, hey, we've got a job for you guys. And that's also a valuable resource for us. So there's a lot of different aspects to the New Air test site other than just the BVLOS corridor.
And is it fair to say then that New York's got a bit of a vision for unmanned aircraft systems within the city, both for delivery, for all the good use cases that we all believe are out there?
There is a huge vision, and that vision was brought by our governor, Governor Cuomo, and Empire State Development, which is the economic development arm that funds Genius. And our funding is part of a bigger investment. It's a $250 million commitment to support the UAS industry just in central New York, in the Syracuse region and the Utica-Rome region, which is a rather small portion of all of New York State. And it's not just to support package delivery in New York City. It's to help with infrastructure inspection from Buffalo to Albany across the thruway. It's to support agriculture work that's up in the North Country. It's to support the DEC in the Adirondack Park, the largest state park in the country. So there are many different facets to why the state is investing in this technology. And upstate New York is historically a manufacturing region. Obviously, manufacturing has disappeared to some extent and we're trying to invest in a new industry that will support a growing economy, create jobs, and also give an opportunity. We're one of the highest concentration of colleges and universities in the country here throughout upstate New York, and it gives an exciting industry for these students not to leave right away to go to Boston, to North Carolina, to Texas. It gives them an opportunity to get an exciting job, right here in their backyard.
How is the weather where you are? Because I guess when I think of RPAS in America, sadly, I think of two places. I think of Nevada and I think of Silicon Valley, and then I think of positive weather in there. So have you got weather situations there that need addressing? So perhaps you'll end up with a good day to Greg as well. Welcome, mate. Perhaps you've got more weather situations that need addressing there, so you might end up with more reliable solutions is where I was going.
Well, we do have weather here in upstate New York. There's no doubt about that. We look at it as an advantage. We have 4 distinct seasons. We have a true summer, fall, winter, and spring. There's no doubt about that at all. But we embrace it. We bring the teams in January, and some of them come from the southern states that are nice and warm. We have West Coast teams, and we figure if they can't make it through January and February, they really shouldn't be in the program anyway. So they're just not tough enough. But yeah, we get snow, we get rain, we get wind. We don't get any natural disasters, believe it or not, up here. It's actually one of the lowest natural disaster areas in the country. But we do get heavy snow, and we look at that as an advantage for a test site. If you're in Nevada testing your drones day in and day out, everything runs smooth, it's always the same temperature, and then you want to do a mission in New York City or Boston, well, they have winters too. So we look at this as an advantage that you can actually test in multiple weather conditions, sometimes unknown forecasts, and be able to prove that your drone is worthy to survive those conditions and make the mission accomplished.
No, absolutely. If I drop out, team, we've got big thunderstorms just kicked off behind me, so someone else take over if I'm no longer here in a moment. Has Bruce gone to sleep? Bruce never wakes up, Richard. It's important to know that Bruce is never awake. And I think, well, Ash is in Romania, who's joining on. He's watching Romania, so he's a couple of hours ahead. So I'm going to jump to a question for him right now from the comments, and then we'll jump back to the test site. And I'm just going to throw out there, that helicopter. Do we all see that helicopter in somewhere in America Town, America, USA this week, and the potential midair? Do we think it's fake? Do we think it's real? Who was right, who was wrong? I have some opinions, but I'll throw it to the floor first, and then we'll get back on track after that. Who's going to take it first? Go with Bruce.
It looked real. I think it's was it droning on or drone on or something? One website or one YouTube channel analysed it and said it looked real because the shadow in the water and everything and all the normal no compositing artifacts. So it probably was real. And I would classify it as yet another instance where a drone has not hit a helicopter. There were no injuries. There was no property damage. Now, it doesn't mean it was a good thing. Obviously, this sort of thing has to stop. But it brings back to the point which I keep saying, and no one's listening, so I'll say it really loud this time. We've got to get GA out of that sub 500-foot area. And now this was right on the border of controlled airspace, which was ground to 4,000 feet or something or other. So the drone shouldn't have been flying there. But even if that helicopter was under directive of air traffic control, it shouldn't have been allowed to go below 500 feet, especially along a coastline where there's a much higher incidence of people using drones and where you've got marine birds, gulls and albatrosses and things. If you're going to fly at that level over the water along a beach, you're going to have to expect that the risk is really high. So by doing that, you're accepting a high level of risk. And if people are complaining, oh, it's dangerous with these drones, then simply get the manned aircraft out of that area. There's no necessity for them to be there. We should see changes to manned aviation laws that say no one can fly below 500 feet unless they've issued a NOTAM so that other people know about it, or if it's an emergency. There's the only two reasons you fly below 500 feet. In that case, this whole drone problem goes away because that drone was below 400 feet. It was operating, apart from the controlled airspace issue, it was operating at the right altitude. The helicopter was too low. There was no need for the helicopter.
How is it that he was too low? He was doing a sightseeing tour. So how do you do sightseeing at 500 feet, Bruce? You have to do sightseeing way below that.
The higher you go, the better the view, Louis. And the thing is that whoever authorised him to fly that low has to be the one responsible if there's an incident.
No, it wasn't. In America, they have a weird thing. The helicopters, as long as they're not going to endanger people, can fly as low as they like. So he was within the law in America.
No,
So where you
clearly
was,
because
no,
the
he
drone
was.
was there, he was endangering people. He broke the law. It was dangerous to fly that low. There was
Well,
a drone there.
right. Well, was that chap flying the drone within visual line of sight? Because 407s are flipping loud. You can hear them coming a mile away. So the guy plainly wasn't looking, plainly couldn't hear it. So I know two wrongs don't make a right. All I will say, if you're going to fly low over water like that, put some pop-out floats on the skids just in case it goes wrong. But you know, that in itself, I thought it was interesting. I couldn't find an ADS-B track for it, and I think what I'm more disappointed in, lots of comments for you in the comments there, Bruce. What I'm more disappointed in is the attitude of the community that has bubbled to the surface after this. Everyone is saying, "Oh, the drone guy's in the right," and "Oh, I'm not sure I agree." Wow, it's hammering down with rain here. I don't think I'm going to be here long.
No, the drone guy was in the wrong. I don't think anyone would say he was in the right because he was beyond visual line of sight. I think he was over a couple of thousand feet away or something, which is a long way away. So you can't say that he was in the right doing that. And also, you've got to take common sense into account. But until we have the regulations changed so that manned aviation, that's an exclusion zone below 500, not just at your discretion, but an exclusion zone without a NOTAM or except in the case of emergency, we're always going to have this problem. There's no way around it. I think Gary has frozen. I think he's been hit by lightning. Hello.
Nah.
He's gone. Any other comments?
The helicopter in US is a case of how do we distinguish who is right from who is wrong. So the helicopter shouldn't be there, but should also the drone be there according to the US regulations? Who's going to be the judge on that story? The FAA? I believe the drone operator has been identified. So is it something that we'll know about, Bruce?
Well, I think it's not a case of who's right, who's wrong. We've got to look at this from a safety perspective. It looks like the manned aviation community are trying to protect their ground by saying, no, we've got a right. The law says we can fly that low, so God damn it, we're going to do it. Instead of saying, well, it's obvious it is getting very dangerous down there. Maybe we should review our best operating policies and even the regulations and say it's no longer safe for us to fly below 500 feet as and when we choose. So if we're going to fly that low, we need to issue a NOTAM so that drone operators are aware we're doing it, such as in agricultural operations and so forth. And as far as helicopters are concerned, it's no longer safe to fly that low. We, for the sake of ourselves and our passengers, should fly higher and safer. And
should a drone pilot fly that high?
The drone pilot was 400 feet. It was a legal height for a drone. And you've got to have that, you've got to give them somewhere to fly. If you say, well, you can't fly your drone anywhere, then people will fly them everywhere because hung for a sheep as a lamb. But if you give them the ground to 400 feet, then if someone flies higher than 400 feet, then you take them away, lock them up and shoot them or something because you apply very, very stiff penalties. But you give them the opportunity to fly safely by giving them an area that is theirs.
But consider that even flying below 400 feet, today we have a case of a drone landing on the main runway of the Lisbon airport. So, and the traffic was stopped on the airport for several minutes. So these are the corner cases, or is it going to be the usual cases of people using drones and not knowing what they're doing? And because, as we know, in most countries, you don't have specific training for amateur pilots. And that's something that professional pilots have some regulations, but amateurs don't. So you just can pick up the drone from whatever shop you want to and put it in the air.
Yeah, that's an education issue. That's a problem of education. It's a fairly simple one. We can educate people better. And there will always be that tiny element of bad actors who just don't give a damn. Doesn't matter what the rules are. Doesn't matter whether they know them or not. They're just going to do their thing. And when you consider how many millions of drone flights there are every year, the percentage of bad actors is incredibly small compared to the number of bad drivers on the roads. Drivers are trained. Drivers are tested. Drivers are registered. And they do much worse things than drone flyers.
But for instance, the case that happened just yesterday in Lisbon of the drone landing on the airport. Everybody is now up with pitches and tar to get to the operator. The operator got himself some house arrests because he was identified, and he was operating apparently professionally, doing some real estate photography, and we don't know if he knew the rules of operating a drone. Only what we know, and the penalty for him now is can be up to 10 years in prison.
Right, so it wasn't a recreational drone flyer; it was a professional drone flyer. Again, recreational drone flyers are no problem.
Yeah, but could be, and I really don't know. For instance, in UK, Ian, how would this helicopter thing of US would be handled? Ian,
Ian, it's you.
Ian, you're muted.
Sorry, I was reading the comments at the side, so I switched off for a minute. Going, hit me with the question again.
It was about the helicopter in Florida.
Yeah.
How would the US, how would UK handle this?
You would see the drone pilot there being at fault. I mean, I didn't watch the full video, I'll be honest. I just did a face palm the moment I saw it and just thought, oh dear God, Balpura, we're going to love this. I mean, I don't approve of anything with your typical, and you get it, especially with the Mavics. It's because they're so small. I mean, because they are so small, I don't think there's a real risk of them doing much damage. But at the same time, the pilots are getting a lot more, what's the word, bolder with them. You know, like we always saw the Phantom as being the menace. These days, it is the Mavic because it's so small. People think I'll fly it for as far away as I want to, and it's unfortunate. And I really wish. I mean, DJI could do it. They could just put in the software that you can't fly out more than 500 meters or whatever the distance is in the world. I mean, I don't mind the fact that, I mean, there's a few issues, but I don't mind the fact they've got a long radio range, because that's good if you're flying, even if you're flying close up and you're going around a tree and you're doing an orbit, it might block it for a few moments. And if you haven't got a good radio signal, obviously that's going to cause a return.